Is sliding ruining games? Let's get into it right now. Does sliding ruin FPS games? To answer that question, we have to go all the way back in time to 1989, an arcade game called Strider. In that game, you can slide under objects. It allows you to slide under a little bit higher objects to go under to move on from section A to section B. As games developed from the 80s all the way to the 90s, the arcade format was still the same. It kept going the same way. But once we hit the 2000s, the FPS genre itself, the first person shooters, it changed forever. Half-Life 2 in 2004 came out. It had crouch, you can move around slowly, but there was no real sprinting. In Call of Duty 3, was incorporated, but it was still slow sprint. It wasn't fast sprint. We move on from the next Call of Duty, which is Call of Duty 4. It had sprint, and speed was a little bit increased, but it still had crouch sprint. There was no sliding. So when did exactly the sliding kick in? After doing research, you can actually tell between 2010 and 2013, this is where the change really started to happen. Gears of War 3 came out in September 2011, before Ghosts, Call of Duty Ghosts. And in that game, you can slide around corners by like moving towards a corner and then bouncing off a corner. And then you can bounce off a wall and wall bounce. And pretty much that was considered skill. When you had a Gnasher, the shotgun, and you can bounce off a wall to another wall to another wall, that was considered. But again, if you look before that, Gears of War 1 came out in 2006, November 7, and that game had multiplayer. It had a slight wall bouncing. But in Gears of War 2, that came out in 2008, November 7, it had even more multiplayer, had more maps. So technically, Gears of War 2, I believe, in 2008, November 7, that was the real official multiplayer wall bounce and slide in gameplay that everybody saw was successful and incorporated into Gears of War 3. Gears of War is technically the founding father of sliding. That is the reason why games are sliding on, because of Gears of War. This is where the first slide in, you can say pandemic hit. That's when all games started sliding. That's when speed was incorporated, was during these moments. In Call of Duty Ghost, it came out on November 5th, 2013. In that game, sliding was introduced, Call of Duty, which was never really introduced. It was the first game. You can slide around corners, you can get from point A to B by just sliding. This was completely different. Call of Duty never had that. In the original and COD Ghost was considered the worst Call of Duty at the time. Nobody liked it. Nobody played it. It was really considered, like, still nobody liked Call of Duty Ghosts. And I believe it has something to do with sliding. The change really hit people with many things. Battlefield 4 did not have any sliding. It came out in October 29, 2013, and it had no slide. It had a glitch to slide, but there was no official sliding. Ghost came out right at that same time. In October 2013, Ghost came out, and championships really took off at that point. A franchise that never had slided before. This is huge because before that, slided was never really in Battlefield 3. It wasn't really in Call of Duty. It was first introduced into those games. So after Battlefield came out, Battlefield 1 came out in 2016. In 2016, Battlefield 1 had slide. You could slide around corners, you could slide, and it was incorporated extremely well. And after that, just every single Battlefield had slided. But there was actually another game I researched and I found that there was a game called Mirror's Edge in November 11, 2008. It came out. It was a parkour game. You can slide around, you can run on walls. It was a fast moving parkour game. It wasn't really for shooting, but it was a fast movement game for parkouring. And I feel this is the game that really saw that first person can be used as a movements, and you can slide around, you can move, you can jump on to buildings, you can clamber, you can move fast. I feel this is the game that really made a difference in the gaming world. This is the game that actually spawned all those changes in Battlefield, and it spawned those changes in Call of Duty, which was then taken and moved on further. So Mirror's Edge in 2008 and Gears of War 2 in 2008 really started this trend. 2008 is the year. Well, everybody saw that Gears of War 2 was successful, and then when Gears of War 3 came out in 2011, they saw that success followed. It wasn't a fluke, that the movement and how everything played was even more successful. Gears of War 3 sold so many copies, and it was extremely successful, and that it was 2 years right before Ghost. So I think Ghost, the company working on Ghost, they saw that Gears of War 3 was successful in 2011, and they copied and they implemented sliding. They said, we're gonna have sliding because look at Gears of War. Gears of War 2 was successful, Gears of War 3 is successful. We gotta keep up with the trend. We gotta not fall behind. So they did. Ghost implemented sliding. As Call of Duty Ghost released, people saw that Call of Duty is the biggest franchise of shooters right now. It's the biggest game, Call of Duty. So when that started sliding, and people started sliding, everybody looked at Call of Duty and said, they're doing sliding, they're doing fast movement, everybody's loving it, people are playing Call of Duty. So the people bought Call of Duty and they associated with, oh, they're sliding, they're moving fast, so we have to make a game that also slides, we have to make a game that also moves quicker, sprint, we have to increase the sprint time, we have to increase the clamber, we have to make everything faster. So instead of taking longer to clamber, you quickly press a button, you're over the edge, you're clambering faster. So when Titanfall came out in March 11, 2014, right after those main games, those Call of Duty games, Titanfall didn't have slide, and people were wondering where the hell is slide, because you move fast, you should be able to slide. It feels like a normal mechanic, and already you can see how those mechanics were implemented into people's heads that yes, a game that moves fast should have slide. It should have slide. But also, Titanfall didn't have slide. It came out in 2014, but it still was a unique experience. It was a unique game. It didn't have slide. It did move fast. There was a lot of wall jumping and a lot of bunny jumping. But still, what I'm trying to get across, it was a unique game. They had an idea, and they did their own thing. Even though the trend was the slide-in from Ghosts, they still ignored the slide-in trend. They did technically follow the trend in speed, but still they did their own thing with big robots and big machines, which Call of Duty didn't do. So technically, Titanfall is a unique game, and that's why it was loved. But when Titanfall 2 came out, then you could see problems did arise. But Titanfall 1 was an original experience, and I do have to give them that. The robots, the uniqueness, the bigness, that was good. Desensitizing the audience, saying, hey, you have to move fast. Because of these implementations into the gaming world, games should have slide. Nobody's going to watch a championship by professionals by everybody just walking straight, walking slowly. People want fast pace. People want really quick sliding. People want movement, because people, the faster you go, the better it seems. Nobody's going to watch a race outside where everybody's just walking along. The faster you are, the better it is. It's considered skill. So again, a title was named Movement King. Whoever was the best at movement was the best at the game. And people call themselves the movement god. Who's the best movement? Everybody's just flicking left and right with their PCs, flicking right with their controllers. Whoever has the best movement has the best skill. And you just see that in competitive championships where you see people just flicking left and right, and they're pros, and everybody's watching that, and everybody's seeing that, and that's good because that's considered skill. Everybody's screaming. That is considered good by society. The conversation back to nowadays, current year 2024, every time you go into a game, it feels too competitive. Everybody's trying to like movement, do super speeds, fastness, and it feels like you just can't keep up anymore. You just feel like it's over for me. I can't keep up with this trend anymore. So what do you people do? They just quit gaming. They just quit and go to a single player game because all these games are fast. Not to mention the skill-based matchmaking, and not to mention that everybody's just over trying their asses off like it's a ranked game, like it's a professional competitive game, but you're actually playing a social playlist. It's supposed to be fun and casual, but everybody's trying so hard. Right. So what happened? The negatives followed. And what are the negatives? Halo is a perfect example of these negatives. 2015, when Halo 5 released, that game introduced extreme movements to the franchise. Movements that were never done before. I'm talking slide, thruster, you can move fast. The maps were specifically stretched out just to incorporate these fast movements. But there was actually a study done on the map Midship that if you make sprint and you make slide, guess what? You have to stretch the maps. And this was proven because you have to stretch the maps, it still doesn't change anything. Sprint is an illusion, slide in is all the speed mechanics is an illusion. And what did this do? This actually ruined the Halo franchise's fan base because people didn't want to play Call of Duty in Halo. They wanted to play Halo. And Halo had a movement system. It had its identity. And that identity was ruined because of that. So the more times went on, 2015, 16, 2017, 2018, it feels games are getting faster now. They're getting super fast. I'm talking Call of Duty after Ghost, Advanced Warfare came out, and that game had extreme fast movements. I'm talking slide in, clamber, and you can run up walls, thruster, and all these fancy movements. It feels the more years go by, the more people are trying to get faster and faster and faster. And but here's also the thing. After Advanced Warfare, people got so sick of all the fast movement, they took a step back. The Call of Duty franchise took a step back, and it says, guys, we can't keep going fast. We can't keep increasing the speed. So they took actually a very smart decision. They brought it back a few levels. They brought it back. And where does that few levels bring us to? It brings us to the next good Call of Duty game that released, and it was a success, which is Call of Duty in 2019 released Modern Warfare. That game had slide canceling, and people loved it, people needed it. In Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 in 2022, they removed slide canceling. It was only basic slide, and people complained so much that the game was ruined. They just couldn't handle not slide canceling. So what did Call of Duty do? They brought back slide canceling, and they made the speed even faster in Modern Warfare 3 2023. And now everybody's just slide canceling every 2 seconds around the corner, and they're saying that's skill. That's movement. We need fast movement. We need slide cancel. We can't go back to the old ways. The old ways are bad. We can't have old ways. We need fast. We need now. So in conclusion, does slide in ruin FPS games? Does slide in now ruin the game experience? That every game feels the same. Everything you're playing feels the same. Apex Legends, Overwatch, Fortnite, Call of Duty, Halo, pretty much all these main big games, Battlefield, they all have slide in, they all have clambering, they all have fast movement. Everybody's trying to be fast and slippery and slidey. You don't have to be slippery and slidey to actually have your identity. See, the best games had its identity. Look at Portal. Portal had its own thing, unique thing, and that game is still renowned as the best game out there because it had its identity. It was doing its thing, and people loved it because it was doing its own unique thing. It didn't have to do that slide and stuff, that parkour stuff. No, it had its own speed, movement mechanics, and people loved that, and people embraced that. Gears of War was really the game that spawned the sliding mechanic, the skill, the aim, the flick, the speed, bouncing off walls. And then Call of Duty saw that and it copied from Gears of War. It said, guys, they're doing it, we gotta do it too. And then what happened after that? People copied Call of Duty. So everybody just copies the next thing. And then who copied Call of Duty? Battlefield copied Call of Duty. And then who copied Call of Duty? And who copied Battlefield? Halo copied them, and then who copied Halo, and then it just keeps getting worse. Everybody's just copying from each other. And then what? Titanfall 2 came out. Titanfall 2 is copying from Halo and Call of Duty and Battlefield and Gears of War, and then becoming everybody's sliding, everybody's moving fast, and then before you know it, all these games are now sliding. If you like this video, subscribe,
and leave a like and comment down below if there's another game before Gears of War 2 and Gears of War 1 where it had the sliding mechanic in a multiplayer game or in a single player game, which I missed.